My name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko number 136 BDG. This is a Pemko. Their part number 136 is a reference to the profile of the threshold. This is an interlocking threshold, and we're going to go over that in a moment. The BDG stands for Bright Dip Gold, and as you look at that, yeah, it's bright and it's gold and it's appears to be dipped is somewhat synonymous with highly reflective. If you're going to dip something, you generally don't dip it to be matte finish. Like if you're going to dip a product, it would be chrome polished sort of procedure. So that's why I think where the dipped comes from. The bottom line is it's an anodized finish over aluminum. It is bright gold, and the term dipped I think is to somewhat help illustrate the resulting finish of it being bright dipped, or bright gold, I should say, even though it's this sort of finish. Okay. Now this threshold, the 136, is available in different finishes, and I'm looking at my chart of finishes here. A for mill aluminum, BDG for bright dip gold, D for dark bronze anodized, G for gold, which would be gold, but it would be a much flatter, matte, non-reflective finish. You can do SN for satin nickel as well, and all of that's on aluminum. Then you can do a B. So there's two base materials and several finishes. The first finishes were just aluminum. If you have a 136B, you're going to have a piece of solid architectural bronze base material onto which you can do different finishes, such as mill finish. If you just specify 136, you're going to get a piece of bronze or architectural bronze, and many people will call it brass. That's going to be mill, meaning what the bronze or brass, if I refer to it as bronze, which I will, you can think of brass. Architectural bronze is the proper term, which is an amalgamation of four primary materials, brass and bronze, and a couple of other materials to give it strength. And properties that allow for the product to be worked or machined or to be appropriate for use as hardware. So think of brass, I suppose, if that's the term you want to, or you're more comfortable with. Mill finish, which is what the product will look like as it's extruded at the mill. Onto that base material, you can do a satin finish, which would be like a 606 finish. You can do a 605 or polished brass finish, which would have a lacquer on it. And then you can do a 613 finish, which would give you a oil rubbed bronze type effect. That oil rubbed bronze would be, of course, dark, and it would match your darker finishes in an oil rubbed type finish. Moving on with the description of the item, let's move to the dimensional properties of the item. And by the way, why would you want bronze? Well, you might want something that is not unlikely to last a century. Solid architectural bronze is far more durable than anything aluminum based, and you will very often see architectural bronze products that used as thresholds that are indeed several decades old. You will see them in the front entry doors of hotels, country clubs, places where the base material is actually going to play a significant part in the selection process of the material, meaning the only way to match certain architectural finishes is to have a similar base material, architectural bronze. The end user might want a mill finish because they literally want the architectural bronze to age, to fatigue, to patina with time, so that it matches the overall look. That could be that's a very common reason why that's done. Oil rub bronze for the obvious reason you might want oil rub bronze. Now, the dimensional properties. This is 4 7/8 overall depth, then it's 1 inch overall height. And the confluence of those two products will serve to make this a very common sort of threshold. It's an interlocking threshold, and that is evidenced by the fact that you've got this lip here, and even here as well, but this is the lip that's more important because included in your order is going to be a hook strip. I've turned it around because this hook strip sample that I have, and this is a sample, by the way, quite literally a sample, It has a cleaner cut on the one end, so I turned it around. So the hook strip, and we'll call this a J hook very commonly, and you can see why we would, is going to get nailed to the bottom of the door, and it will mate or connect with that threshold just like that. And as the door closes, you can see the incredibly positive connection that's going to be made there, allowing a significantly high caliber connection between the threshold and the door. You're going to certainly and most positively retard the transmission of air and moisture because you have that sort of positive mechanical connection. As an R value, obviously it wouldn't be that high because you are having metals touch each other, which will conduct that. But in terms of every other property, this mechanical interlocking connection is substantial. This sort of connection is very common here in Chicago. Homes built in the 1950s and 60s, you'll see interlocking thresholds everywhere, all over the place. And frankly, it's a system that will last decades. No door sweep can claim to make that sort of long-lasting sort of impression in the marketplace. The only time that you might have to service this sort of system is when the J-hook fatigues, and most likely it's unintentionally damaged, where let's say you remove the door to paint it or whatever's going to happen, and then you take the door and you physically place it down onto the floor, crushing the hook strip. The good news is you can buy the hook strip only. This part number is Z61. You can search our site for a replacement hook strip only, and this is a piece of white coat galvanized steel, so will have its own inherent corrosion resistance as well. Now, you're going to attach this with nails, and I don't have any nails to show you, but this system will include small nails to attach this to the door, and then screws for this that will be in a complementary finish. You'll nail that to the bottom of the door. That's going to connect just like that. The overall height, 1 inch, perfect for lots of residential applications. The width is also, again, very compatible with applications that you're going to run into in a residential scenario. There's another hook strip available as well, which would be an L-shaped hook strip that you would mount to the face of the door, and that L shape would just come down and lock underneath here. Okay, uncommon. And for every 10,000 of these that you'll see one of those L-shaped hooks, so it's not very common. The dimensional properties on the hook itself, overall is about 1 inch. Overall height, just heavy on 1/4 inch. Now, one nice thing that you can do with this is you can nail that to just the bottom of your door, so that you're going to have a scenario where your hook strip hook is just going to connect to your threshold just like that, okay, as drawn in that picture. Another thing that you can work on to make it a bit more of an elegant installation would be a scenario where you mortise the bottom of the door and you install the hook strip in the notch on the door as shown here. That's not uncommon either, and one reason that you're going to want that as well is just think about that inside corner helping the overall system quite positively reduce that transmission, retard the transmission from one side of the door to the other. Also, what will happen is, because that mortise will be here and your door will hang down, you're going to have a bit more of a nice detail when you're looking at the threshold. You're not going to see any of this. Okay, so you're going to block a lot more of that out. It's uncommon to mortise the bottom of the door, but there are several, but it is done frequently as well. It's more common to have a flat end door or just a straight cut door. Now, what else makes, and interlocking thresholds are elegant for not only those possibilities when you've got a hook strip, but also what makes them elegant is this trough sort of system. Okay, if there were to be any moisture that would get inside, it would leak down into that trough. If this was the genuine article in terms of the full-size interlocking threshold, you would have weep holes drilled down in the trough, 2 or 3 of them, and it's literally a hole drilled right in this area down here and over here and maybe over here, Then in the face of the threshold, they're going to notch that. They're going to file this ever so slightly, so that any moisture that gets in here will get returned right back out. That's another reason why interlocking thresholds are quite elegant. There's an option when you order this as well for a water pan. That's literally a sheet of aluminum, assuming you have an aluminum-based material, that will allow the water to make contact with it rather than the sill underneath. So it's going to be very unlikely that you get any moisture on the inside. But if someone were to stand there and put a hose on the face of your door, yeah, you're probably going to get some water infiltration with high pressure water actually hitting it. But you'd have to have one heck of a horizontal rain to get any water on the inside of that when the door is closed. Water return is a concept very similar with an interlocking threshold as well. So keep all of that in mind. When it comes to interlocking thresholds, you can obviously do different heights. You can do different widths. You probably get up to 1.25 inches with something like this, and down as small as 1/2 inch. But when you've got something so small, you're going to forego this water return trough system that's here, so you wouldn't see that sort of profile in a much smaller sort of threshold. Okay. There is a link below this video to a document called Printable Cut Sheet, which is just a dimensional view of the item. Now, I'm a fan of interlocking thresholds. It's old technology, but so are records, and they sound better than MP3s, is what this old guy says. You'll see them installed in applications primarily residential in nature is where you're going to really see them. You can occasionally see them on the front door of that country club sort of scenario. You'll see them there as well. And they're long-lasting, positive means by which to seal the bottom of the door. So I'm partial to them as a result. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Pemko products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Pemko, their part number 136 BDG, interlocking threshold in bright dip gold, or any other Pemko product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.